Imagine it is possible to save birds by telling funny bird stories. My first funny bird story comes from when I was 10. It happened in a small bookshop in New Mexico. Next to the register, held in a 10-inch by 10-inch cage, flitted a small black bird no bigger than the palm of my hand. The bird chirped wonderful things in a squeaky sing-song voice. It said, "Hello, and thank you, come again, and let me show you where to find that." My dad had little interest in the bird. "It's a mynah bird," he said dismissively. "We had them in Hawaii all over the place. They used to dump all over the laundry while my mom was hanging it up. She'd swear at them. They'd swear back." But then, while the shopkeeper was busy elsewhere, my dad taught the mynah bird to swear. I was completely delighted, and the shopkeeper was not. I believe funny bird stories can save birds in our environment. I believe telling bird stories can leave a lasting and positive impact on people, but humans have not always looked at birds or wildlife in general as having value. My love of birds started with that mynah bird experience and has spread to owning parrots. Because of my relationship with parrots, I've gained greater appreciation for all wild birds. I love watching woodpeckers and squirrels throw things at each other, and every spring I mark my calendar the first robin I see. But it made me wonder what conservation needs do wild birds have, and how can a bird watcher with very limited resources begin helping them? In the 1880s, it was President Teddy Roosevelt who began to link wilderness and land with conservationism, though this wasn't the conservation ethics of today. Teddy Roosevelt practiced a human-first conservation ethics. Historian and educator Jeff Crane wrote, "Western landscapes needed to be preserved or conserved for both economic and environmental reasons, and to preserve masculinity. Wildlife and the wilderness in this context was meant for men to use first and nature to live in second. Humans were absolutely top of the food chain with no exceptions." Theodore Roosevelt's belief of conservation could not hold up to the reality of birds as smart as men. After all, man was the highest thinker of all animals. The idea of a parrot being as smart as a 4-year-old child would have been beyond laughable. Maybe one might consider a circus trick, but a standard basis for bird brains? Never. Yet, according to Girl Scientist, a science columnist for the Guardian newspaper, cockatoos understand object permanence. That is, the goofy goffins knows what the words up, down, above, and below means. Further, the parrot demonstrates knowledge of behind, beneath, and within. Girl Scientist notes, the study found that the spatial reasoning abilities of Goffin's cockatoos rival those of corvids, great apes, and even human children. The experiments proving cockatoo smarts use shell games such as those one might find being worked by a sidewalk card hustler. Maker's Muse is a 3D printing design creator who often posts intriguing content on YouTube. In this image, Maker's Muse uses a series of increasingly difficult designs and a lot of patience to teach wild cockatoos how to solve object permanence puzzles. The sulfur-crested cockatoo in this image has been working on upping his puzzle mastery game for about 3 months. In the 1920s, environmentalist Aldo Leopold changed our understanding of conservation. Leopold was distressed by human-first behaviors. This began with watching his friends killing animals just because they were there. In later years, he observed tree-planting crews cutting down trees with rare eagles' nests to plant trees off a federally approved list. These observations in the 1920s and 1930s pushed Leopold to develop and publish land management manuals based in an ethics which moved humans from the peak of all food chains to resting beside many food webs. In doing so, he set the stage to redefine conservation to a standard of behavior which maintains and preserves the land in favor of restoring habitats and protecting wild animals, including birds. My first parrot, ironically named Aldo, was a Pacific blue parrotlet with a very vivid eyeshadow coloring. Parrotlets are the second smallest parrots in the world. They are about the size of a breakfast egg. When her previous owner handed her to me, the owner said several times Aldo would never eat anything but seed. Never. And strongly impressed I should not even try. I got home that night, set Aldo's cage on the table, and opened the door so Aldo may fly around if she wished. I warmed up a bowl of stew for dinner, sat down to eat, and suddenly had an egg-sized parrot standing on a nugget of beef. She made no cares to my awe, while she chewed through a slice of white-cap mushroom. Aldo made many happy birdie noises as she ate. Parrotlets are relatively new to the bird ownership realm. Their feisty demeanor, bright colors, and love for snuggling into shirt pockets have made them darlings of bird owners. In the wild, they eat easily available fruits, insects, frogs, snails, and many other pest species. Farmers are more than glad for the pest management help parrotlets give. These colorful birds naturally range from Brazil to Mexico in small flocks of a few up to a few dozen. Parrotlets bond by sharing food. Food is a major part of parrotlet life, and I like to think that makes them the foodies of the parrot world. In 2003, the UN completed the first Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, aka the ME assessment. Ornithologists and editors of the book Why Birds Matter, Sakarioglu, Winnie, and Whelan, state the purpose of the UN's assessment was to evaluate the potential consequences of ecosystem change from a broad perspective of human well-being, with an emphasis on ecosystem services. Considering the dire environmental situations the world currently faces, knowing the potential effects of losing birds along with other necessary species would have on overall human well-being is absolutely crucial. According to the United Nations ME assessment, birds fulfill all four niches of ecosystem services. That is, they provide food or are a food source to other species of the environment. They can provide regulating services by helping control wastes and spread seeds. In the niche of supporting services, they provide nutrient cycling and soil formation. As a side note, Mahendrian and Aziz, researchers at India's Department of Ornithology, state among birds, over 920 species are known to involve in pollination. This includes hummingbirds, sunbirds, false sunbirds, flower peckers, white-eyes, honey-eaters, lories, and Hawaiian honeycreepers. To me, it is in the fourth ecosystem niche that cultural and recreational services which birds shine. On a cultural level, birds are seen as representatives of the gods. Two such birds for the Native American people are the crow and the bluebirds. The hieroglyphs of the ancient Egypt show the god Horus with a falcon head, and in the Catholic religion, a dove is often depicted as a symbol of peace. This list barely scratches the surface of birds as gods or messengers to gods. I am sure, though, the ME assessment did not consider the impacts of coffee on birds. It's a weird segue, I know, but a wonderful one where the New Zealand Kia are concerned. Kia are alpine parrots turned coffee fiends. They have learned to steal items from cafe customers. They barter the stolen goods back for cups of coffee. This includes openly thieving customers' hats, jewelry, camera gear, wallets, and even money itself. In other words, Kia have figured out the value of trading goods and services. This image is of a standard Kia interaction at a cafe in Arthur's Pass, New Zealand. New Zealand is not the only place where birds have wrangled a foothold into the human world. Humans' self-serving behaviors have created an odd type of tourist attraction through the USA, that of visiting known feral flocks of parrots. Cornell University's Lab of Ornithology keeps a citizen-updated eBird database of both wild birds and parrot flocks in the USA. This includes 56 distinct parrot species in 43 different states. Now, if you're confused as to how the USA has 56 distinct parrot species, well, humans are, if anything, very good at introducing non-native animals into unlikely places. Ornithology population biologist Pruitt Jones states there are already more red-crowned Amazons in California than there are in their native habitats in Mexico. I have personally spotted a trio of umbrella cockatoos in flight along the western branch of the Platte River, though it is hard to tell if they are wild or homeless-owned or simply free flyers. Free flying is a type of captive parrot training exercise done outside. In any case, if feral, these parrots wouldn't qualify for the database as a flock. A minimum of 25 established nesting parrots must be noted to meet the threshold. The adoption and release of pet parrots into the wild is the strongest reason wild bird enthusiasts have of disliking parrot owners. But at this time, this human-first behavior may be what is keeping rare and endangered parrots off the extinct list. Take, for example, the Spix macaw, which you may remember are the blue parrots in the movie Rio. When it was announced in 2000, the Spix macaws were considered extinct in the wild, so few images of the small-sized pale blue macaws existed that newspapers and online sources ran with pictures of the large and vivid indigo hyacinth macaw instead. Fortunately, in 2016, a breeding pair were recorded in the wild. This became the first sighting of a Spix's macaw in the wild in more than 16 years. And since declared extinct in the wild, breeding programs utilizing pet parrot Spixes in the USA, the UK, Germany, and Brazil have managed to raise and release 52 Spix's macaws into protected rainforest areas. This brings us to the final leg of my talk. How can you tell a funny bird story? These are 4 tips I've developed over the years of bird watching. First step is to notice the birds in your neighborhood or around you. In Colorado, we get all sorts of weird species you wouldn't think of: orioles, anahingas, cormorants, storks, herons, blue jays, and blue jays flocked in with sparrows and house finches, pelicans, and even a swan or two. Guys, we get a catbird, which are birds that meow like cats. They can drive you nuts looking for a lost kitten. When you start seeing how wild birds, or any other wild animal, acts normally, it becomes much easier to see where things quirk up. The second is to note how the birds work in our environment. How do birds use us and our technology to their benefit? Like when I was smoking some BBQ a few years back in the middle of June. I looked up to find a pair of wood doves on the roof of my house. Every time the breeze blew the smoke their way, they poofed up and rolled around on the roof. At first I was worried because birds just don't do that. Do they? As it turns out, they do. Some treat wood smoke like rolling around in the dust. It helps pick up extra oils. And some treat it like a steam bath, good for purifying the skin of fleas and ticks. I'm amazed, and it's okay to be amazed, at what birds accomplish with human things. The third step, and this is very important, no dead bird stories. The fourth and final step is simple. Keep in mind that birds, owned or not, are wild animals. They need our respect for their homes in wetland preserves, in the desert, in the tree of the park down the block from you. If your funny bird story about a quirky event sparks awe in the neighborhood kids, there's a much better chance they'll start gathering and sharing their own funny bird stories, which opens minds to assisting in further conservation efforts. And overall, funny bird stories help foster compassion and environmental awareness, i.e. 2 cornerstones of Leopold's conservation ethics. Per bird enthusiast Sean Smith, the more bird stories that are out there in people's mind, the more people will think of birds as important to preserve. This helps to create an atmosphere where the birds are protected with our words. His belief is that such a simple start also leads to further actions which benefit birds. I believe these stories and awesome bird experiences open our eyes to the benefits that birds bring to our mundane human lives. At the very least, watching birds at a yard feeder, or in a zoo-like setting, or even watching a friend's parrot tap dance on top of their cage, makes for delightful entertainment. I want to thank you for listening and watching my talk.